we have to talk about what EA did to Dynasty and Road to Glory in College Football 27 this year, and that is that they put microtransactions in the mode while simultaneously slowing progression of your player in Road to Glory and your coach in Dynasty, and I believe you can't even max out either without paying. I'm going off of what other people are saying there because Dynasty and Road to Glory aren't my modes of choice. I dabble in them here or there, but I don't know about them as deeply as other people, but if everybody is saying it, there has to be some merit here, and we see that there are microtransactions in the game now, so clearly that can't be a coincidence. Now, what's frustrating here is this does not need to happen in an offline mode. I understand in online modes there's reasons you could make for having microtransactions, but offline this really just doesn't have a place in my opinion, and at the very least, if you were going to sneak that in there, you should not be changing anything else about the mode in terms of slowing down progression, taking away the ability to max out a player and a coach, because at the end of the day, we're constantly told by people at EA, it's your game, it's your guys' game, however you want to play, we want you to have the sandbox. This goes against that. I'm sorry, but this does not align with those words. And I know this isn't the fault of the developers. I don't want them to take blame for this because I don't think this is their fault. This is obviously above their head. These are execs. These are people that are trying to find more ways to monetize the game, but this isn't it. Offline modes are supposed to be sacred. If someone wants to upgrade their player or coach as fast as possible, max them out fast, we should be able to do that. It's our game. At least that's what we're told. And I'm not saying it should be something extreme like maxing out your coach and your player in a day. There should be a reasonable progression that happens, and we've had that in the previous games. If you wanted to go fast or fastest, you could do that. But from what people are saying, they have now removed those options. And look, even though I'm not a diehard Dynasty or Road to Glory guy, I might dabble in it a bit, but for people that are, that's part of the mode. You feel like you beat the mode when you get to 99 or when you max out your coach. You feel like you've achieved it all. And the way things are set up now, according to the people that have put in the work and done the research and crunched the numbers, it seems like it's impossible to do any of that now, and that's just not okay. And I think that people could have maybe ignored the fact that microtransactions were snuck in there if you didn't change these other things. Because at that point, while I still think a lot of us wouldn't agree with them being there, hey, what you do with your money on your own time's on you. It's an offline mode, do what you want. If that's what you want to do to progress, do it. But that should not change how anybody else wants to play the game and is now making it either slower or impossible to do what you could do in previous years. Now, my guy Bordeaux put out a video earlier on this, and we had talked previously about how we wanted to handle this because we don't like the way that this unfolded because as he said and as other people have said on Twitter, myself included, we didn't know about this. And this is something that we should have known beforehand. And you could say, well, why didn't you ask or why didn't you look for something like that? Well, nothing like this has ever happened before. So there was no way for us to know that this was going to be a thing. And just speaking for myself here, nobody else, even if it would have been there, I wouldn't have seen it because I didn't even open Dynasty or Road to Glory during early capture. I mean, most of y'all know my channel. You don't think of Dynasty or Road to Glory when you think of my channel. I dabble in it here or there. I do videos here or there, but that's not what I mainly make content on. Surely I do cover the news, but that's when EA puts out a deep dive blog or title updates because I like to cover the general news of the game and I like to kind of just be an area where you can listen to the news kind of in a condensed format instead of having to go read a long deep dive blog. Not everybody wants to do that. But in terms of the modes themselves, you know, I very rarely even open those during an early capture. I spend early capture focusing on trying to put out gameplay, especially as much raw gameplay as possible so that you can see all the plays, hear the announcers, hear the crowd, things like that, because that's important to a lot of people that are picking up the game. Then I'll do equipment and presentation. Sometimes I'll show uniforms. Like that's the stuff I try to do with early capture. And to that point, even if I were to open Dynasty, I definitely wouldn't have even noticed that the sliders were changed because I dabble in those modes. I've made some content here or there. I mean, the other day I made best teams to rebuild, but that's like surface level knowledge, right? I don't know about sliders and stuff inside of Dynasty. And I believe Bordeaux even said the microtransactions, at least in terms of Dynasty, I'm not sure about Road to Glory, they're only if you do the online or like cloud version, which if you're doing offline, then you wouldn't have even seen them there anyway. But the main problem there is, according to what people are saying, even if you play offline, your progression is still slowed. You don't have those fast and fastest options anymore. And that's the big issue. So it's already just weird the way it's even in the game. It feels kind of hidden and just like snuck in there to begin with. And it's just, I don't really like the way they went about this, to be honest. Like, even if you were going to put it in there, at least being upfront about it would have been a slight bit better than this. It just feels like it's kind of tucked away. And what you're going to notice if you're a real player of these modes more than anything is, dang, I really can't progress or max out my player. And then you dig deeper and you say, wait a minute, what is this? I just don't really like the way they're going about that. But all that said, I understand how this looks. And I assure you, none of us knew that this was in the game. And again, for me, you know, I'm not even focused on those areas, as I'm going to say again. You know, my goal with early capture and just content in general is I just want to be as informational as possible. I want to show you what's in the game to my knowledge. I want to show you gameplay. I want to show you presentation. I want to make sure you're as informed as possible. And I understand, well, something like this being in Dynasty or Road to Glory, like that would be nice to be informed on. But again, if it wasn't in our build, then we couldn't show you that anyway. I'm just trying to make sure within the best of my ability and the time that I have that I can show you the things that I know you come to my channel to see for the game. The same way I make videos leading up to early capture, I'll tell you all the new features that are in the game, but I'll also make videos saying these are the 5 biggest things that aren't going to be in the game this year. Things like historic teams or importing your draft class to Madden, because I know those are things people care deeply about, and I want to make sure that y'all know, as many people as I can reach, hey, those things still aren't in the game. That might be a deal breaker for you. Just like I make a video that says here are the top 5 and best and worst things about the game this year, according to what I know. This is what I think the game's doing well. This is what I think the game's still missing, or they're not hitting the mark on, so that you have as much information as you can to make an informed decision whether you want the game or not. That's really what all I try to do, is try to be as neutral as possible. I do give opinions on things. I'm not going to say that I don't, but I try to just present as much information as I can. But what's really upsetting overall is I think outside of this, the game has been received very well. I mean, there's not been a lot of bugs this launch, as we've seen in some previous games that they've had. A lot of people seem to be liking the different changes that have been made and the gameplay. Obviously, there's some things with recruiting from what I'm hearing, that there's some issues with recruiting. If there is any good news that I can bring in this video, I have been told they are working on that, and a fix is coming very, very quickly for some of those problems with the, I guess, NIL and balancing of recruiting and stuff like that. So I have some good news for you there, but you know, outside of that, I mean, I think most people would agree, you know, all those things aside, this is a really solid launch. It's a, you know, not a lot of bugs. The gameplay feels good. A lot of people like the game. And what's upsetting is, you know, the devs did good work this year. They actually did a lot of good, and it's going to be completely overshadowed by the fact that they snuck these microtransactions in. And look, I'm not one to shy away from speaking on things like this. Yes, typically I try to just present info and stay neutral. I do give my opinion. Certainly I do on things, but I try to just be as informative as possible. But, you know, fix Madden franchise. If you were around for Madden 21, they did nothing for franchise that year, and this was already coming off a few years where they were making very minimal improvements at that, and then they did nothing that year, and it caused a big backlash. And I talked about it then, and you know, this year when the equipment movement took off, whether you think that's a small thing or not, hey, people wanted updated equipment. It was not getting enough love, and in both of those instances, those are just 2 off the top of my head, we saw a lot of change come from it. If you look at Madden 21 franchise to current Madden, it is a night and day difference. That's not to say that there still aren't some things that could be better about it for sure, or more things that it's missing, but you go to 21 and you go to now, that fixed Madden franchise jumped off a much different attitude towards that mode from EA, and they put a lot more work and effort back into it from that point forward. With equipment this year, in my opinion, we saw the biggest equipment jump from one game to the next that at least I've seen since I've been making videos. So doing videos like this, putting a little bit of pressure on them, it does seem to work. And that's why it's important that if you don't agree with this, and none of us do, that we should say something. And the thing is also, it's only going to get worse. We saw it happen with 2K. I think 2K is a great blueprint for, you know, what not to do, at least in terms of microtransactions. Because if you look at 2K and what happened when they first introduced it in the game, sure, it wasn't that bad then, but each year they pushed it a little further and a little further. And then you look up 8 years down the line and you're like, damn, what happened? I got to pay $50 just to get to an 85 for my player. I got to spend virtual currency or buy virtual currency because I want to put some accessories or new shoes on my player. That's why even when people say like, oh, you know, if you're going to do microtransactions, make them cosmetic, even that, I think there's a time and place online where you can find different ways to get creative there, but I don't want Road to Glory turning into like a situation where you got to pay to put an arm sleeve or a different helmet on your player. That can't happen. And we saw what happened with 2K. If you let it keep getting pushed further and further each year, 10 years later, you look up and everything is monetized now. And that's why it's important to speak now while this is happening for the first time and say, hey, we don't want it like this. We don't want this game to end up how 2K's My Player did. There's a lot of good things in My Player and My Career, but the microtransactions really make that mode not that fun anymore. And we don't want that happening in Road to Glory or Dynasty. These modes are supposed to be pure. And what's really frustrating too, like I said, they put out a good game this year and this is overshadowing it. But also this was an area, at least for football with EA, I can't speak on the other games they make because I don't play them like that. But for football, that's something I thought they did really well, is they never really caved to the offline mode microtransaction, at least to my knowledge. Everything was pretty pure. There was a reasonable way to upgrade your players. You could do it faster if you wanted to because, hey, it's your game, it's offline, why not? And now to see them do this is frustrating because this was one thing that they had a leg up on the other games with. They were keeping those modes pure, and now we're seeing the first little domino drop of that going away. And if we don't say something now, it's only going to get worse. And I think this is foreshadowing that they definitely plan to bring some of this stuff online in the future. Maybe the open world thing is truly happening. And look, I'm not saying I expect zero microtransactions in an open world environment, but at least for what is staying offline, that has to be untouched. The player progression has to make sense. You should be able to max out your player. You should be able to equip any equipment and anything like that to your player offline. Once you go online, if they create a different world there, I'm sure you can find something that you're going to monetize there. I'm not naive, but offline has to remain pure. And I think if we speak out about it, we could get some stuff changed. Now, moving forward, I'm going to ask more questions when I work with EA. This time around, they kind of surprised all of us. This is not something we ever expected because it's not something that ever happened before. But if something like this is going to happen for Madden, for example, I need to know that before early content. I at least need to let people know what's going to be happening. And I think partnering with EA can do a lot of good. I think the fact that I get the game early and I'm able to present as much detail to you guys as I can in the window that I have, I think it's important. I'm able to show you raw gameplay, let you see how it's playing, let you hear the announcers, hear the crowd, let you see the new equipment, let you see the new details that I can find. I think it's really a lot of good for me to have that partnership because when I put these videos out, I get tons of comments. Some people love it. Some people say, well, this still looks trash or they still didn't do this, so I don't want it. Great. That's the point of the video for me. I'm putting this out so that you can see as much as I'm able to show you in the time that I have. This is what I'm presenting to you so that you can know what's in the game, what it looks like, what it plays like to the best of my ability, and that helps you decide what you want to do. So I don't want to not partner with them because I think a lot of good can come from this, but moving forward, I'm going to have to ask more questions because I don't want a situation like this happening again. And I know some people will say, well, if you don't like this, just stop uploading videos. That's just honestly not a reasonable thing that I can do. This is my livelihood. If everybody stopped their job because they didn't like something their boss or their company did, almost nobody would have a job. I have to still continue to put out content. I enjoy making content. I enjoy playing these games. So I'm not going to stop that, and it's not reasonable to expect me not to. But I've seen multiple times in the past making these videos, making posts on Twitter, everybody coming together. We've seen the change happen multiple times over, and I think it can happen again. I think if I go away, just like Bingle said this himself, if we go away, then there's no voice. So at least the voice is still here as long as we continue to have content and have people that enjoy watching it. We're able to also have that voice to push for change. And I've seen it happen enough times to know that it can work. I know I'm kind of rambling at this point, but that's just how I honestly feel about everything. We don't want the microtransactions in the mode. We definitely don't want progression or the mode being held back in favor of incentivizing microtransactions. And I think it would just be a really good decision by EA to just admit that they were wrong on this one and it wasn't a good idea and just to make the changes that we're asking for.